would know that by asking Darius. I have no grudge against you. It's Dauphine Bulbous who wanted me to help her, admitted Darius. Since he was caught, he wouldn't let Dauphine get away with it. After all, it was she who caused him this misfortune. As a result, even though he might be killed, at least she wouldn't survive either. It wasn't a surprising answer, so Ava and the others weren't astonished, but they were still very mad. Dauphine? It couldn't be her own idea. Astor must be involved, Ava thought to herself. The Bulbous family? Great. Very well. It seems I just have to kill them, Ava said through clenched teeth. She was full of hatred towards the Bulbous family now. Before today, she had decided to take revenge without killing them, but now she really wanted to. What evidence do you have to prove it was Dauphine? Asked Ariana. She believed Darius's words, but she needed more proof. When they went to pay the Bulbous family back, they could stop the Ansera from getting involved with the evidence. Although the Ansera normally wouldn't allow immortals to kill each other, the Bulbous family's behavior was unacceptable. As long as there was enough evidence of their misdeeds, the Ansera wouldn't stop them from taking revenge. Even if they didn't take revenge, the Ansera would do something to punish the Bulbous family. After all, what they had done broke the rules in the world of immortals. Evidence? Of course I have it, Darius said. Then he told them the address of his house. In my house, I have evidence of my conversation with Dauphine, as well as a recording of her and I making love in my bed. I've recorded it all. The memory card is in the study, next to the master bedroom. Dauphine should still be in my house, too. Since he decided to drag Dauphine into this trouble, he told Ariana everything honestly. Ezekiel and the others were disgusted when they heard that Dauphine got intimate with this evil immortal, but they didn't have time to think about it. With the evidence, they believed that it would be easy to solve this problem. Ariana, go get the evidence in his house. Keep Dauphine there. Ezekiel and I need to find Henry right away. We'll talk more about this after we get back, instructed Ava. She needed to find Henry as soon as possible, so she couldn't pay attention to Dauphine herself. She could only ask Ariana to go there. I also want to find Henry. Plus, I can help by releasing magical power. The sea monster will feel it, and will come to us then. William and Zella could go to the house. Since we already caught this evil immortal, the Ortiz family should be safe, Ariana pointed out. This time, she didn't listen to Ava, because it was impossible for her to not go look for Henry right now. She couldn't stand not seeing him anymore. Hearing Ariana's words, Ava agreed, so she said nothing further. As for this evil immortal, he was too guilty to live, so Ezekiel directly killed him. Darius didn't want to die, but he couldn't run away. Right after Ezekiel killed Darius, Ariana called Zella and told her about their situation, then explained that she needed her or William, or both of them, to go to the evil immortal's house. They were both stronger than Dauphine, so they would be able to catch her, even if they were alone. Once William and Zella learned that the person who injured Henry had been caught, they felt greatly relieved. They immediately agreed to do what Ariana asked them to do. However, Henry was still missing, so they were still a little worried. After Ezekiel killed Darius, he pulled out his flying sword and flew Ariana and Ava to the ocean. Although it was daytime, and people could easily see them if they flew, they didn't care about that right now. They were filled with anxiety and needed to get to the ocean as soon as possible. Luckily, the sky was very cloudy today, so they could hide in the clouds. They also did their best to avoid crowded places, so that not many people could see them. However, someone still noticed them. However, due to the distance, the person didn't see them clearly and couldn't believe what he just saw. Therefore, even though he saw them, it didn't cause a sensation. Zella went to Darius's house alone. After all, Dauphine wasn't at a high level, so Zella would be able to defeat her on her own. She took a taxi to where Darius lived, then walked to find the house. When she walked closer, Zella sensed an immortal. However, because of the gap between their levels, Dauphine didn't sense Zella right away. When she finally did, it was too late, and Zella had already gotten into the house through the window. Dauphine didn't have time to run away, so Zella successfully cornered her in the master bedroom. Although Zella was at a higher level than her, snapped at Zella. Who are you? I came to catch you, snarled Zella, immediately attacking her. Without hesitation, Dauphine fought back, but due to the gap between their levels, she was soon captured. Zella knew that she was the mastermind behind the scheme against Henry, so she used a lot of strength. Therefore, Dauphine got seriously hurt when Zella caught her. I don't know you. Why do you want to catch me? Dauphine angrily asked as she struggled to get away. She didn't realize that Zella had a relationship with Ava. Why can't I catch you as a stranger? Zella retorted. What exactly are you going to do to me? Demanded Dauphine. I won't do anything to you, but someone else might, sneered Zella. Who? Dauphine inquired, but she actually had a name in mind. Is it Ava? She thought to herself, but that was impossible. Ava couldn't have known where she was. However, who could it be if it wasn't her? Unfortunately, Zella said nothing. She only took out a rope and tied Dauphine up. However, the ropes wouldn't be enough to keep Dauphine from escaping. So, to prevent her from running away, Zella knocked her unconscious as well. The last thing Dauphine felt was a pain in the back of her neck before she lost consciousness. Once Dauphine was unconscious, Zella went to the study to find what Ariana wanted. After she found the memory card, she didn't open it, but carefully put it into her pocket. She went back to the master bedroom and sat on a chair to watch Dauphine. After flying on their swords for half an hour, Ezekiel, Ariana, and Ava reached the ocean, but it was so large, and they had no idea where to start. As a result, they had to rely on their intuition to find Henry. The sea monster could live in the ocean, but Henry couldn't, so they didn't think he would be underwater anymore. Accordingly, they started searching from the land. There was a small deserted island nearby, so they thought maybe Henry ended up there. Once Ariana arrived at the shore of the island, she released magical power to see whether the sea monster could feel it. Unfortunately, he didn't come rushing back to her, even after she waited a long while. She was slightly disappointed, but she wasn't in despair. Instead, she continued to search for Henry. Because this was a deserted island with no one living on it, Ava and Ezekiel took their flying swords to search farther away. Ariana remembered that there was a yacht in her telepathic eye space, so she took it out and steered it around the island. Although it wasn't likely that Henry was in the ocean, there were many small caves by the sides of the island. Those caves sometimes had areas that weren't submerged in water, so they could accommodate people. Perhaps Henry hid in a cave in order to avoid the evil immortal. Normally, when immortals were covered by water, their senses were covered too. Only Ariana's pure magical power could spread freely in the water. Ariana searched and called Henry's name along the way as she released her magical power, but she and the others still failed to find him the whole day. Both Ariana and Ava cried countless times. Right at that moment, at a certain part of the bottom of the ocean, the sea monster sensed Ariana. He immediately woke up and then tried to go to see her. The next second, he remembered Henry, so he decided to swim around to find him first. However, he couldn't see him everywhere. The last thing the sea monster remembered was losing strength and sinking to the bottom of the ocean, and obviously, he had lost Henry in the process. The sea monster blamed himself for failing to take Henry to the surface of the water, and now he was lost. Even though the sea monster couldn't find Henry, he still needed to see Ariana. He had to tell her where he and Henry sank earlier. If they went to look for Henry together, they would be able to find him quicker. The sea monster knew that it was nearly impossible for Henry to still be alive after they fell into the water. However, he wanted to see his body, even if he was dead. After that, the sea monster swam to the entrance of the cave, but a white female sea monster stopped him all of a sudden. The sea monster was a little surprised. He didn't expect to meet another sea monster, although he wasn't the only one in this world. Still, it was rare for them to meet each other. What gives? You wake up and you immediately can't wait to leave? Shouldn't you thank me for saving your life? The white sea monster criticized angrily. The sea monster realized that this white sea monster had saved his life, and he should return the big favor. Therefore, he said, "Thank you so much for saving my life, but I need to go." Suddenly, the sea monster realized that the white sea monster must have seen Henry too. Therefore, he immediately changed his words and asked, "Hey, when you saw me, did you see a human by my side? Where is he now?" "He's dead, so I didn't take him back," replied the white sea monster after a moment's hesitation. "What? I need to find him. I'll return your kindness in the future," stated the sea monster, then immediately went to find Henry. He couldn't blame the white sea monster for leaving Henry behind. After all, she had already saved his own life, even though it wasn't her duty. He should be grateful. Seeing that, the white sea monster stopped the sea monster once again. She called out, "Wait a second, I lied to you. He isn't dead. I put him somewhere and formed a barrier around him, but I'm not sure whether he's still alive now." Since the white sea monster saved the sea monster's life, she didn't mind helping Henry out as well. However, she couldn't heal an injured human being, so she put Henry down and used her magic to form a barrier around him. The barrier would allow him to breathe underwater so that he wouldn't drown. However, Henry hadn't received treatment for his injuries, so the white sea monster wasn't sure whether he had survived. "Really? Thank you so much. Please take me to see him," the sea monster urged, feeling cheered up at once. Although he didn't know whether Henry was still alive, at least Henry's body was saved. "Let's go," the white sea monster agreed, then took the sea monster over. Currently, they were in a big cave with all kinds of colorful coral and seaweed. It was the white sea monster's home, so there weren't any other creatures around, perhaps because they were afraid of the white sea monster and stayed away from her. Although the white sea monster wasn't very aggressive, she had a higher status than other creatures in the ocean. The place where she had left Henry wasn't too far away, so they soon arrived. He was in a large cave that wasn't too far from the white sea monster's home. There were a lot of years. Some were from shipwrecks that transported jewelry and precious stones, while some of the pearls came into being by themselves under the sea. All to the top of the cave after they arrived. The two sea monsters instinctively looked up and saw a transparent round barrier. There was a man lying inside, and it was Henry. "What happened? How did the barrier go up there? And the magical power is flowing inside," the white sea monster remarked in amazement, because she had formed the barrier on the stone bed earlier, and now it was high up in the cave. He must be curing himself with the magical power. Yes, the magical power was going into the barrier. "He's curing himself by absorbing magical power?" the white sea monster repeated, sounding surprised. At the same time, she understood what was happening. This human being in front of her wasn't an ordinary person, so that was the reason that he could cure himself with the magic. Thus, neither of the sea monsters bothered Henry, because doing so could easily cause an accident. It was impossible for the sea monster to take Henry away right now, so he would have to go see Ariana without him. However, at this moment, Henry needed care. The sea monster didn't want to leave Henry behind and go to find Ariana. Although the white sea monster had saved them, and she would probably be nice to Henry, the sea monster was still worried. As a result, he decided to ask the white sea monster to go find Ariana for him. "Can you do me a favor? This man's family is searching for him on the surface. Can you help me bring them down here?" asked the sea monster. If the white sea monster was unwilling to do that, he would just have to do it on his own. "No problem," the white sea monster agreed without hesitation. She wasn't usually helpful, but she agreed to help simply because another sea monster wanted her to do him a favor. She hadn't seen other sea monsters for a very long time, so she got excited when she met this one, especially since he was a male. Besides, if she didn't go, the sea monster wouldn't have enough strength to swim all the way up to the surface now. "After you swim towards the surface, you'll sense some magical power. Follow it, and you'll see a young woman named Ariana. When you see her, tell her that I told you to bring her down here," ordered the sea monster. "Can she understand our language?" the white sea monster asked, surprised. "Of course. She's my ex-owner, and she sent me to protect this man, who is my current master," exclaimed the sea monster. "What's their relationship?" asked the white sea monster. "They're engaged," answered the sea monster. He lost a little patience when the white sea monster asked him so many questions, but he couldn't get mad. "Go now, help hesitated for a while, because they were reluctant to leave like that, but Ezekiel's words made sense. Therefore, after thinking for a while, they agreed to go back. Unfortunately, that meant that Ariana missed the opportunity to see the white sea monster and find out that the sea monster and Henry were at the bottom of the ocean. When the white sea monster got back to her cave, she explained, "The magical power suddenly disappeared when I was swimming towards it." The sea monster was struck dumb for a second, but he didn't blame the white sea monster for not succeeding. He woke up too late, and he also knew that Ariana would have to leave after searching for Henry for a whole day. In that case, the sea monster felt it was necessary for him to go out by himself. "Please help me take care of him. I need to go find his family myself," urged the sea monster. "You're still injured. Are you sure you can handle it?" the white sea monster asked slowly. The sea monster's original injuries were only slightly lighter than Henry's. He was able to wake up so quickly because the white sea monster gave him some breath. Otherwise, he would still be asleep now. Because they were the same species, the white sea monster could give breath to the sea monster, but Henry was a human being, so it was useless for him. The sea monster suddenly remembered that he was indeed very weak at the moment. In fact, when he swam over from the first cave, he already found it difficult, but he cared too much about Henry, so he didn't pay much attention to his own condition. "Well, then I'll rest tonight. I think I will be more energetic tomorrow, and I'll swim up then," the sea monster decided. He understood that Ariana and the others must be very worried, but he couldn't do anything about it. He couldn't ask the white sea monster to help him again, because she didn't know the route. Plus, she had never been completely out of the water before. If she caused any trouble by accident, it would be terrible. "Hey, what's your name?" asked the white sea monster. "I don't have one," the sea monster replied. "Why didn't your master give you a name?" questioned the white sea monster. "I don't know," admitted the sea monster. "Your body is dark gray, so I'll call you Flint," decided the white sea monster happily. "Whatever," shrugged the sea monster. It didn't matter much to him what the white sea monster called him. "I don't have a name either, but my body is white, so you can call me Ivory," suggested the white sea monster. "All right," agreed Flint. "So, Flint, how's the world outside?" asked Ivory. She always wanted to see the world outside the ocean, but didn't have the courage. Although she was at a high level and had great powers, she knew that she was a special species and should avoid humans. "It's nothing special. It's not safe for us unless we have a human as a master," replied Flint. "Oh, fine," Ivory nodded, but she was slightly disappointed. Nevertheless, she continued asking Flint all kinds of questions about the world. Flint felt a little bothered, but he still replied to all of her questions. On Ariana's way back, she called Kay to find out whether there were ships that had passed by that area of the ocean. Unfortunately, Kay couldn't get much information from surveillance cameras, so Ariana called Gerald next. She told him about Henry's situation, so he could take some soldiers to conduct an investigation at the nearby wharf. Given the current situation, it wasn't necessary for her to keep it a secret from Gerald any longer. Once Gerald heard the news, he listened to Ariana and made the arrangements. When Ariana, Ava, and Ezekiel were back in Los Angeles, they went to Darius's house. If Ariana and Ava didn't punish Delphine personally, they wouldn't be able to get over it. However, even if they punished Delphine for it, they wouldn't feel much better. In fact, even after they killed Aster, they would still be in a bad mood. They wouldn't feel better until they knew that Henry was safe. Ezekiel also followed was different now, so she couldn't easily bully her any longer. Plus, Ava stared at her with a seething hatred. Obviously, she had found out something. Ava's grudge against Dauphine was her personal affair, so Ariana didn't butt in, even though she hated Dauphine very much. However, she stared at her with hostility, as if she wished she could tear her to pieces. Dauphine recognized Ariana. Although this was their first meeting, she understood why Ariana hated her, but that didn't mean that she would accept it. Nevertheless, she couldn't say anything right now. Even if she could, she didn't dare to. Ava walked towards Dauphine slowly, putting more and more pressure on her with her menacing glare. In the past, Dauphine wouldn't believe that Ava would dare to hurt her, but now she knew it was going to happen. If she were Ava, she would want to take revenge too. At this moment, Ava wanted to rip Dauphine's heart out, but she forced herself to stay calm. She didn't lose control of her emotions. Once she was in front of Dauphine, she removed the tape on her stepmother's mouth. Dauphine winced from the sharp pain, but couldn't complain. "You little," Dauphine growled, but her voice trailed off. She wanted to ask about something, but decided not to. "Do you want to ask how I knew you were here?" Ava sneered. Dauphine said nothing. That was indeed a question in her mind, but she guessed the reason. Darius must have failed to murder Ava, so he betrayed her and revealed her location. Since Dauphine was silent, Ava continued. "The evil immortal you sent to kill us is already dead. Before he died, he told us everything. He also had evidence of your deal and your affair. Do you think I should give the evidence to Aster? What will he do then?" Dauphine gasped in fear. "No, it's not true. She protested. She wasn't sure whether Ava was telling the truth or whether she was just scaring her, so she denied it before she saw the evidence with her own eyes. "It's not true? Then why are you so scared?" "Well, I think I can project the video of you two getting intimate on a large screen, so everyone will see it," Ava threatened. She actually had no intention of doing that, and she would only show it to the Balbus family. However, she said that to scare Dauphine. "No!" Dauphine shouted. Now she believed that Ava really had evidence that she indeed had an affair with Darius. To her astonishment, he had recorded them in the bedroom. Why did he do that? Ava reached out her hand and seized Dauphine's jaw. "Stepmother, I actually had no intention of killing you when I got revenge on the Bulbus family, but now I changed my mind. But I won't kill you myself. I'll let Aster watch the video, then I'll watch him kill you with my own eyes," she snarled. "No, no, no!" Dauphine screamed. She emphatically shook her head, showing reluctance and fear. She didn't want Aster to see the video, because he would really kill her. However, she also knew Ava wouldn't miss this opportunity to get revenge on her. After all, she had asked Darius to kill Ava's son, so she would never forgive her. In fact, part of Ava wanted to kill Dauphine right away. She had evidence of her scheming against her and her son, so the Ansera would punish her for it, but she wanted to see the drama that unfolded afterward. However, even though she chose not to kill Dauphine right now, she wouldn't hesitate to torture her. With a ringing sound, Ava forcefully slapped Dauphine's face. Because she used a lot of strength, Dauphine's cheek swelled at once, and blood also seeped out of the corner of her mouth. "Stepmother, no matter how much I hated you for bullying me before, I've never been so impatient to pay you back. But you tried to kill my son. I want to tear you free." She sneered for a few seconds, then continued. "Sorry to disappoint you. My son isn't dead, but you're going to be soon." When Dauphine heard that Henry wasn't dead, she was furious. If he wasn't dead, that meant all of her efforts were meaningless. What was worse, she had suffered a double loss. Ava slapped Dauphine's other cheek with the same force, so that both of her cheeks were swollen. "I didn't forget how you slapped me back when I was young," Ava said angrily. Upon thinking of those bad days, she was still very angry. "You even wanted to ruin my face because you were jealous of my beauty. Now let me do it to you today," she yelled. After that, she took out a dagger from her infinite pouch. Seeing that, Dauphine shook her head in horror. "No, no, no!" she screamed. Appearance mattered a lot to a woman, even though she knew that Aster would surely kill her after watching the video of her with Darius. She didn't want to have a disfigured face. No one was willing to suffer that. However, it wasn't up to her right now. worse. The next moment, Ava made another cut on Delphine's cheek, and she shouted in pain again. About 10 minutes later, there were cuts all over Delphine's body. Only then did Ava finally stop. "All right, she can't run away now. Let's leave her here. We can go back now," muttered Ava. "In case any accidents happen, I think I should leave the mutant fox here with her," interjected Ariana. Then she let the mutant fox out of her telepathic eye space. Ava agreed. After telling the mutant fox what it should do, Ariana and the others returned to the bungalow. All of them were very upset. Back in the bungalow, they went to their own rooms, but no one could sleep. At midnight, Ariana was so tired that she fell asleep at her desk. Right after she fell asleep, she dreamed about Henry. At the bottom of the ocean, she saw him sinking continuously, as if there was no ground under him. Afterwards, Henry reached out his hand to her. It seemed that he wanted to catch her. "Ariana, I'm here. Come and find me," he pleaded. At that moment, Ariana abruptly woke up in a cold sweat. Although it was just a dream, she had a strong feeling that Henry was in the ocean. Otherwise, she wouldn't have had that dream. It must mean something. However, if Henry was really in the ocean, it wasn't good news, because it was impossible for him to stay alive underwater for so long. Because he was an immortal, he could stay at the bottom of the ocean for longer than a normal person. But now he had been there for so long. He had been lost for a whole day. Besides, he was injured. Ariana didn't know how serious it was, but it must be pretty bad. In that case, she really didn't want Henry to be at the bottom of the ocean. She had to find him as soon as possible, and she couldn't sleep until she did. Therefore, Ariana immediately stood up and walked out of her room. She needed to talk to Ezekiel and Ava about it first. When they heard about her dream, they had the same idea as her. Whether Henry was at the bottom of the ocean or not, they had to go search for him. Without hesitation, they set out again. Ezekiel flew on his sword with Ariana and Ava, and they quickly reached the ocean once more. This time, instead of searching the land or the shore, they directly dove into the water. Ezekiel used his strong powers to form a barrier around them, so that they were able to breathe and talk normally underwater. Even when they were in the ocean, he could still fly with his sword, so there was no need for them to walk or swim. They stood on Ezekiel's flying sword, and he led them to look around in the water. The ocean was wide and broad. Although they believed Henry was at the bottom, it was still difficult for them to find him. They weren't sure whether he and the sea monster were together, and whether they were still alive, but Ariana still released her magical power along the way. If the sea monster could feel it, he could find her. Because of the force of the water, they moved slower with the flying sword than they would in the air. However, they still traveled fast. Unfortunately, after searching for an hour, they still couldn't see him. However, Flint, who was in Ivory's cave, sensed the magical power Ariana released, and he got up from the ground at once. "Flint, what's wrong?" Ivory asked. She was at a slightly lower level than Flint, so she didn't sense it yet. She was surprised by his sudden reaction. "I think that I can sense my ex-owner's magical power. She's in the water. I need to see her," said Flint urgently. He then swam out, but he was still a little injured, so it wasn't easy. Seeing that, Ivory volunteered. "Let me do it for you. I don't think you can catch up to them like that." Flint agreed and replied, "Thank you, Ivory." "My pleasure." Ivory was happy that Flint called her by her name. The next moment, she swam out. After Ivory was out of the cave, she sensed the magical power and immediately chased after it. Before long, she saw Ariana and the others. Actually, before she found them, they saw her first. Ezekiel sensed a monster was approaching fast, and he told the others about it. They all believed that it was Henry's sea monster. After seeing the creature, they were sure it was a sea monster, but it wasn't the one they were familiar with. However, they didn't bother to attack it, because they just wanted to know whether it had seen the sea monster they knew. At first, Ivory thought that Ariana would be alone, but she saw two more people with her. They weren't human beings, but high-level immortals, so Ivory was a little scared. Nevertheless, she didn't intend to cause them harm, so she continued to move close to them. Still, because there were three of them, Ivory was take you there. Follow me this way, please, instructed Ivory. Flint? Is that the name of the sea monster? Ariana wondered. If it weren't an emergency, she would surely ask about it. But now she was in no mood to do that. Upon hearing that Henry and Flint weren't dead, Ariana and the others were greatly relieved. They didn't doubt Ivory's words at all. Thank you so much, Ariana said gratefully. Then they followed the white sea monster. Although they were curious about how Henry managed to stay alive at the bottom of the ocean, since Ivory told them that he was still alive, there had to be a way. Anyway, they would know soon. Because there was only a short distance to the cave, they quickly arrived by following Ivory. Flint was waiting in great anticipation at the entrance of the cave. Once he saw Ariana and the others, he got excited. My ex-owner and her 2 seniors, you're finally here. I'm sorry, I didn't save my master soon enough after the accident happened. We fell into the ocean. Luckily, Ivory rescued us. Otherwise, we might... Flint's voice trailed off. Although it wasn't his fault, he still felt guilty. It's not your fault. No need to say that, Ariana assured him. If it hadn't been for Flint, Henry would have been in greater danger. Therefore, they couldn't blame him for what happened. The next second, Ariana asked in a hurry, "Where is Henry?" "He's inside," said Flint. Then he moved to the side and let them into the cave. Once Ariana and the others walked in, they saw magical power flowing up from all directions. They looked up and saw a round transparent barrier, which Henry was lying in. Although they couldn't feel Henry's breath, he was absorbing the magical power, which meant that he was alive. They didn't feel relieved until that moment. As long as Henry hadn't stopped breathing, Ariana could save his life, no matter how seriously he was injured. "Master, can I get inside the barrier that Henry is in? The magical power in this cave is too weak. I don't think it's very useful. I need to put my magical power directly into his body," urged Ariana. "Let's try," replied Ezekiel. He wasn't sure it would work, so he needed to try. Afterwards, they floated up and placed their barrier on Henry's. Then Ezekiel used magical energy to connect the 2 barriers. Fortunately, the 2 barriers were successfully connected, and they saw Henry in person and felt his breath. However, Henry was extremely weak, which saddens them. Ariana and Eva almost cried again. Before Ariana stepped forward to help Henry, Ezekiel gave her a pill and instructed, "This is a recovery pill. Although Henry is seriously injured, and it might not work right away, it can help him recover. Help him take it, so that it'll be easier for you to put magical power into his body afterwards." "All right," said Ariana, taking the recovery pill. After that, Eva urged, "Ariana, pay some attention to yourself as well. Don't give all your magical power to Henry. Don't leave yourself weak." Although Eva hoped that Henry could be cured as soon as possible, she wasn't selfish. She wouldn't sacrifice Ariana's safety for her son. It would have a great impact on Ariana's body if she consumed a lot of her power at a time. So Eva was worried about her, as well as Henry. "I know, Eva," Ariana replied, feeling touched. She would do her best to save Henry, but she knew when to stop. If she became weak just to save him, Eva and Ezekiel would blame themselves. She didn't want to mentally burden them. After Ariana stepped into Henry's barrier, Ezekiel closed the passage of the 2 barriers and then went back to the ground. When Ariana went into Henry's barrier, he frowned a little because he sensed a familiar smell, but he was unconscious, so it was just a conditioned response. Ariana didn't think much about it. She helped him take the recovery pill first, then directly put her magical power into his body. Because Henry was seriously injured and dying, he needed a lot of magic. After Ariana put her power into his body for a long while, he still had no reaction. 5 minutes later, his fingers finally twitched, and Ariana felt a little relieved. Eva and Ezekiel, who were standing below, were also very worried about them, but they couldn't do anything for the time being, so they could only watch. If Ariana wasn't here, they would still be able to cure Henry, but it would take a lot more time. Since Ariana was helping, Henry would recover much faster. After half an hour, Ariana became very weak, but luckily, Henry was getting much better. His face regained its color, and he began to breathe steadily. Even his eyelids moved a little, but he still couldn't open his eyes. At that moment, he was still up